least here's what, okay, Brad? Should I hit got it? Remove the bump outs, right? We heard that pretty loud and clear at the public information meeting that most people were supportive of moving the bump outs. Control roadway speed. You know, this was brought up. We didn't have a lot of conversation at the public meeting coming into it about controlling the speed, but we heard the public say, we need to control speed. Speed humps, stop signs, enforcement, speed limit signs, you name it, there was a need for controlling the speed along that corridor. Provide some parking along the west side. That was kind of hit or miss. You know, some people wanted it, some people didn't seem like they cared one way or the other. And then I would say there was more against the east side sidewalk than for it, right? You know, that nobody really wanted the sidewalk. I asked numerous times why, and I would say a lot of people just didn't feel it would be used, right? Nobody's gonna use it, they're gonna still walk in the street. I think that was kind of the majority, and people can speak to that other tonight if they have other opinions, but it can fit. I think a lot of people were worried about mailboxes, garbage pickup, and tree removal. But when you look at the options, none of those are really that difficult to achieve. Mailbox relocations, garbage pickup, and there really isn't that many tree removals compared to not doing anything, actually, if we just move the bump out. So we can look at that in a second. So it's more of just, I think, the use. Is somebody going to use that sidewalk? So based on that meeting, we came up with some other alternatives for the October meeting, 3 other alternatives for the October meeting to try to listen to the public as part of that and try to kind of find a median ground if you know, we wanted to do something different on this roadway. The first option, and we'll go over these on an exhibit, but I'm just going to talk through them first. The first option is remove the bump outs, add 3 speed humps along this road. So 3 separate speed humps, and we'll show where those potentially could be. Add 3 parking bays that would hold a few car stalls along the west side. Mill and overlay the roadway because that was Dan's original plan through Public Works. We got to take care of that. And then restripe it for bikes and cars. No mention of sidewalk in this option. So option 1 does not include the sidewalk. Option 2 is similar to option 1, the exact same thing, but option 1 shifts the roadway from Owen to Maywood approximately 3 feet west. So up by Maywood, from Owen to Maywood, we'd shift the curb 3 feet west. And what that does is it sets up sidewalk to be placed along the whole east side of the road someday in the future without having to touch either one of those retaining walls on either side, the historic or the one on the opposite side of the road up there. So it would fit in without doing that. Now the sidewalk would be right behind the curb up near that retaining wall, but it would fit. So you could move the road, shift the road a little bit on the north end, but not still, again, this option 2 doesn't provide the sidewalks today. It provides it in the future, or the ability to put it in the future, okay? In probably the easiest fashion without having to redo some of the road again. Option 3 is similar to option 2, but it adds the sidewalk now. So they're all pretty similar. We can go through them. You know, option 1 is kind of getting what Dan wanted done with a few minor things. I would say with the bump outs, that's, you know, and that was driven more by the committees and the mayor wanting to do something, you know, on this roadway. But all of them are going to require the mill and the overlay and the repaving of that street for Public Works. So I can jump out of that and just show you the options real quick. They're all very similar. Let me see if I can get out of this. I can't see my mouse. There it is. You still got me here, Brad? Yep. So we're going to start at the south end. This is option 1. So down at Winnequa Bridge, we repaved down there already, and it came up. This is Winnequa Bridge intersection, and it came up for a section of repaving. So there's nothing to do there. As we work our way up the road, that's all just repaved and marked. So you've got a center line, a drive lane on either side, and then the bike lane on either side of that. That's all you're seeing there, is it's repaved and remarked. It's not until you get up to Graham that you have some improvements. So right before Graham, there would be a speed hump. See this hatched area? And then there's some new curb along this section, you can see 2 lines that go on either side, and then a bump out for parking right by the park. 3 parking stalls right by the park that you could park into. And again, we're removing the bump outs here, so there's new curbs. So this section would all be new with the speed hump at Graham. Really wouldn't change the back of the curb locations. Those would be back to the bump out, the back of the bump outs, except for right here in the park, where there'd be 3 spaces. I'm going to continue to move up the corridor. Again, this is option 1, so there's no sidewalk on option 1, and not a real good ability to put sidewalk in the future either on option 1, because it leaves the roadway where it's at. I go up to Greenwood. Again, you can see just before there's another bump out for vehicles. We try to fit these where we could. They don't have to go in these spots per se exactly. We're just giving you options on, you could fit a few parking bays in here. We remove the bump outs and we add another speed hump just north of that intersection. Again, the rest of it's just repaving and striping.
Hey Josh?
Yep.
You're not sharing this screen right now.
I am not. Okay, thank you. Can you see it now, Brad?
Yep, you're good. Thank you.
Sorry for those people online. I'll just scroll back. How many people do we have online?
20.
Okay, I'm going to scroll back. So I'm showing at the far limits down by Bridge Road, just pavement markings. When you come up to Graham Drive, I'm showing a speed hump and this parking pull out for 3 spots. Again, the rest of it would be paved lanes and bike lanes. Scrolling up to Greenwood, again, there's a parking bay there and another speed hump. Then as we go further, we go up to Frostwoods, there's another parking bay here. And again, we're removing these bump outs. So you can't see them in the thing, but there's bump outs at all of these locations. They are gone and the bike lane goes right through now. The bike lanes in this case, in the southern half, are 6.5 feet. So they're quite a bit wider. They provide a lot more space. And the drive lanes are 10 feet wide, so 20 feet total. Then we go up to Owen, and that's where our 3rd speed hump is. You can see it hatched there. Some stormwater and some curb is all that's modified up there. Otherwise, the rest is just all pavement marking. Now we get up by the walls. The reason I highlighted these walls is you can see we can't really fit a sidewalk here or here along the wall because that's where the road is. The road edge basically on the one retaining wall to the east is right up against this wall. It's like a foot away. On the other side, there's about 3 feet to this wall. So there's not a lot of space. There's about 4 feet to the wall on the side. So again, it just kind of sits in there as it is today. There's not much changes as you move that way up Maywood. It's just more of a pavement job and remarking. Let's go to option 2. Brad, you can still see this?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. Option 2 is the same as you come up to Graham. There really is no changes. Remember, the only thing we're doing for option 2 is now we're going to move. I'm just going to go fast because Greenwood's the same. Frostwoods is the same. And once we get to Owen, the road starts to shift. So in here, I'm moving the curbs on either side. I'm moving a curb here and I'm moving a curb here. And it's interesting to note that there is some tree removals that are taking place on these bump outs. And now that we're moving the curb a little bit, and we can talk about trees if we want to. In option 1, there is 5 trees removed. In option 2, there's 5 trees removed. And in option 3, with the sidewalk, there is 11 trees removed. But 3 of those are ash trees planned to be removed anyways. So there's 8 total removed that would not be removed otherwise, based on the other 2 options where there'd be 5. So there's not that much different. And when I'm talking trees, I'm talking 6 inches in caliber or larger. Yes, there's going to be some undergrowth and some smaller caliber stuff that we're going to have to clear out of the corridor. I'm talking the more mature trees. It's hard to quantify a lot of the small stuff in preliminary design. We can get a better number when there's a final design on that. So in this case, the road up here is shifted right up against this historic wall. It's a foot off the historic wall, and that provides enough room for a sidewalk along this side, right along the other wall, without having to move walls at all. Now, is it tight construction? Yes. Is the contractor going to have to be careful? Yes. Is it go right up against both of these walls? Yes, we're right along it. So it's no different than being along this wall today on the east side. It'll be very similar to that. So this only provides the space. It does not provide the sidewalk today. It leaves the sidewalk off for a future project, if that were the case. So option 3 is exactly the same, except it adds a sidewalk along that entire side. And I'm just going to zoom in. You can see the sidewalk meanders throughout here, and that's to avoid trees. So there is trees in here. You can't really see them, but they're shaded behind because we surveyed all of them to see where they're at. We're avoiding the trees. So we're meandering around trees where we can. There's cases where no matter what we do, there's going to be some trees we hit here, right? And in this case, they're both ash trees where we hit. Again, there's 11 trees and 3 of them will be ash. We could work with residents to move out even further behind them, but I don't know if we're going to want to bring sidewalks further into properties. Those are discussions we could have if you move along with this option. So the sidewalk meanders through the whole corridor. I just want to zoom in up here to the yellowed section. It basically fits along this side, right between the curb and the wall. So the curb and the wall and the snow, from what the Public Works has said, is if we're going to put a sidewalk along the curb, they would remove the snow in those portions and those stretches if we had to do it. So those are kind of the 3 options we wanted to bring forward to Public Works to go back and to talk to the public about. The public will probably have some more ideas and some more thoughts, but this is to kind of build on what they told us last time. So option 1, again, just to kind of clarify, is removing those bump outs, adding the speed humps, repaving the road, and adding some parking if desired. The parking also eats into some people's what used to be lawn space on that side, on the west side. So we'd have to talk through that with those residents. And then option 2 would be, shift the road on the north to set up for a future sidewalk. And option 3 is to do the sidewalk now. Let's talk briefly about the costs, and then we can go to comments, I think. So Brad, I'm going to try to share that other screen now. A second here. Oh no, did it go all the way to there? So cost, option 1, the cost wise, and I think what Dan put in the budget, in his budgetary sheet, you'll see it is $913,750. The cost to move the road but not put the sidewalk in is $1,021,250. And then the cost with the sidewalk is $1,343,750. So about $300,000 to add a sidewalk along that one side from Bridge Road to Maywood. That would be the difference, but that also includes moving the curb. So that's really it, just to kind of give you kind of an overview of what we kind of did. The public meeting where we came back with some other options, talking to staff, talking to the mayor. The mayor had a lot of input along with a few others collaborating on what kind of alternatives we could propose to Public Works. And now I guess we're here to take public comment, and then maybe I can answer questions from Public Works.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm going to go ahead and then shift us over to the appearances section now that Josh is done with his presentation. Before we get started, I just want to remind folks, I know I said this once already, but this is a comment section for you. This will not be the place to ask questions. The committee can ask questions, clarifying questions from you, but essentially you're presenting your opinion to the Public Works Committee is how this is going to work. I'm going to I just kind of pulled the people that were going to speak for this. So before I have them speak, I'll read those who had just registered for or against. And so Nikki Stute registered against the changes, sidewalks on South Winnequa. And Kurt Stute registered against the... You're going to speak? Okay, absolutely. Okay. So then we'll move over to those that wish to speak. This isn't in any particular order, just as they came in. So the first person we'll hear from is Arlene Berber. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. at 401 LaBelle. If you'd like to go to the podium to speak, I would like folks to keep their time to 3 to 5 minutes. When you get close to 5 minutes, I'll raise my hand and ask you to wrap up, just because we have so many people tonight. So if you could state your name.
Hello, my name's Adrienne Ferber. I just want to make sure everyone can see me. I live on 401 LaBelle. I am a bicyclist, and so I'll be speaking about my thoughts on how this could hopefully improve safety on Winnequa Road for people in Monona and also people in the whole community. So I think first point I'd like to make is that Winnequa Road is an integral part of the Madison-Monona Lake Loop for bicyclists. There is a ton of traffic on that bike loop of recreational and commuting bicyclists, and those bicycling has increased a lot in the pandemic, as has people walking in their communities and getting out. So Monona, I think, has both a responsibility to our citizens of our community, but also to think about the bigger group of people that are using that road very extensively. I myself ride around Lake Monona on my commute 5 days a week. So as we're considering this, I just wanted to bring up 3 important points. First of all, I am really glad that the bump outs are going to be coming out, and I'm so about speed humps. I agree that fast traffic is a problem, and that my hope is that cyclists will have a straighter, smoother path along Winnequa so that there aren't obstructions coming in and out. The other point that I would bring up in a number of road designs, redesigns, one of the things that you don't think about until the last minute is where are all the gutters, the sewers, the water taps going to go? And I strongly encourage, as you're thinking about the program going forward, to please not put those in the middle of the bike lane. They're dangerous obstructions, and for someone who is riding on a 1.5-inch tire on the road, it's very dangerous. So if those are able to not be in the middle of the bike lane, that's great. And then my third point is regarding sidewalks. As I said, live on 401 LaBelle. I walk my 2 dogs extensively through our neighborhoods, and we do not walk on Winnequa because we are not safe walking on Winnequa. I cannot walk my dogs on one of the major roads in my community because it is not safe. We are moving in and out of traffic. My dogs have to stay immediately right at my side. They don't want to stop anywhere because their car's going too fast, too close. I am strongly in favor of putting that east side sidewalk in because, as I said, the pandemic has changed a lot of how we use our community. We don't just drive to and from our jobs. A lot of us work from home. A lot of us lost our jobs, like myself, and we're using our communities differently. So thank you.
Next, we have Casey Kornfeld, 5707 Winnequa Road, would like to speak for informational purposes.
So as she identified, my name's Casey. I am a longer, about midterm member. I know many of you guys have lived in Monona most of your lives. I've been here about 5 years, but I am a daily user, walker, biker, and driver on Winnequa Road. And I will agree, as a pedestrian with my kids and my dog, I do not feel safe walking, and I often do not feel safe biking. And as a driver, it is often very challenging to feel supportive of the bikers and the pedestrians. So I agree that this conversation needs to happen. One thing I would really like to push to this committee to consider, that I see again not on the alternatives, is a discussion of a one-way. So I have talked extensively with public safety, as well as many community members that live in the area, and feel strongly that that needs to be on the table as an option. So, and I would also like to add that I think it should really be from Healy on, so that it could be in conjunction to connect to the sidewalks and the pedestrian walkway there. So I think that is critically important to assess for, because it is a lower cost option that would not limit discussion of sidewalks in the future, especially pending some of the options that we discussed today, because it would primarily be getting rid of those bump outs, laying your curbs, and then the cost is the painting as well as signage. We do know temporarily, we had a number of months when Bridge Road was out that we had it as a one-way, and I will feel personally, anecdotally, I felt way safer walking, biking through that time period, even with the construction in place. So I really, really, really want to voice that is not an alternative currently on the table, that I think it really has to be. Talking with public safety and members all the way up Winnequa, they literally do not let their kids cross the road because there are so many safety concerns. And I think that, I'm really glad that we just tackled this, but I think that that is a lower cost option that has not been discussed and needs to be more thoroughly discussed. Thank you. Happy to have any questions if anyone has any. And I know I feel like I have a number of colleagues or, members here that may be speaking on that same, so I will keep it short.
Thank you. Next we'll have Jim Byer, speaking against sidewalks.
Good evening, my name is Jim Byer. I live at 6100 Winnequa Road. Just to start, as a biker, my wife and I were actually riding our bikes around the lake in 1988 and saw the lady pounding in the for sale by owner sign and bought the house. So we have a very passionate feeling about biking. I also have a passionate feeling about use. Not totally against sidewalks, but I really feel like this sidewalk is not going to get used the way it should be used because of the fact that it meanders in and out. The alternative to that, I don't see as cutting down trees and making a perfectly straight road. So I would like to offer option 1.5, which is the 6.5 foot combination lanes, the full length of Winnequa Road. I believe, because we walk the road a lot, and since we haven't had parking, I feel very safe walking on the west side of the road. I think if there were 6.5 foot lanes on both sides of the road, you're walking against the bikes, and 99% of bikers are very considerate people who will share the road with walkers, especially if you're going in the opposite direction. And so I would not move the road west at the north end. I would leave it where it is and have a continuous, nice 6.5 foot lane on both sides of the road, all the way down, that bikers and walkers could share. I think it's a good compromise. I think it would work. I think if it doesn't work, you can always add sidewalks later, and you can always move that curb later. And I don't think you have to move that curb now. As a 29-year volunteer firefighter in the city of Monona, we have discussed the speed humps, and we really don't think it's a major problem because we're also in favor of slowing traffic down. I'm not going to disagree with the one-lane road because it would be perfectly fine with us, but I think that a wonderful compromise is to have the road consistent, its full length, have nice shared lanes on both sides, and slow traffic down. So thank you very much.
Next we'll have Tim Casper, who's speaking for informational purposes only.
So a couple things. First off, I don't understand why we can't ask questions or when the appropriate time to ask questions about this is. I don't have any problem emailing people, but you get into a public forum and it's nice to have some questions asked and have them answered. The second thing is when I'm told there's not an option for a one-way road, when I'm trying cases, I get that answer all the time. It wasn't an option. That doesn't mean it's not an option 99% of the time. What it means is that somebody doesn't want to make it an option. And for whatever reason, you guys have chosen not to look at the one-way option on this. You're going to hear from a number of people today that want you to look at that. It's lower cost. You can fit it within the same roadway. No trees are removed, but you refuse to look at it. You refuse to give us a cost on that. The second bit is I am looking at the estimated cost from the 2018 study that was done. And from South Winnequa Road, Schluter to the bridge, the maximum estimated cost of ped bike improvements and milling the road is $437,000. I don't know how we got to these numbers in 3 years, but I don't think the construction costs have gone up that much. And I would like to see somebody do an analysis of cost on a one-way. I am fully in favor of sidewalks. I think it makes it safer. Casey wanted me to say that. Maybe we could just have walking lanes, and that could work too. But I am fully in favor of sidewalks. This whole thing could be very simple, be cost effective, and could be done reasonably if we look at a one-way. I don't know why you guys aren't doing that. Nobody's answering me on this. Nobody will give me a cost. And I just think it's a failure of government to do that.
Thank you. I will say that it's standard for us to not have a dialogue during appearances sections in all formal committee meetings. There will be a question and answer period in the public information meeting. Okay, next we'll have George Lightburn, who will speak against.
For the minutes, can you remember to have them state your address, please?
So I registered against, but I don't know if I'm for it or against it, because I don't know, you're, as I understand it, you're considering 3 options tonight.
Correct.
So, so I live on the east side of Winnequa. We built a house 21 years ago on vacant property. And we understood at the time that there was traffic on Winnequa Road. There's still traffic. The city hasn't grown. I'm not sure the traffic has really grown. But we also understood that the character of Frost Woods was a place that we wanted to live, wanted to build a house. Then a few years later, we were told that the road needed to be redone. Incredibly poorly designed. And I might add, seemingly poorly built. The road started to deteriorate in an incredibly short period of time. I think we have to consider that as we move forward on Public Works. I don't know if it's a contracting problem or what, but it was, that road is in terrible shape for a road that's, what, 13 years old now? Sidewalks, I understand they're contentious. There are people of goodwill on both sides. I am not necessarily opposed to sidewalks, but the thing that you can't help but notice in these conversations is the lack of data that's brought to bear on the topic. You know, we talk about the cost. We haven't seen, we know traffic counts. I think we have that pretty well. And I think one of the alders herself went out and counted pedestrians and bicyclists and such. So we're starting to get some information. The key piece of information, of course, is the safety of the road. And honestly, I've never seen anything on that, on how safe or unsafe the road is. And somebody who bicycles quite a bit around the lake and around Monona and walks quite a bit, walked more than I wanted to last year in the pandemic because we were stuck in Monona for the whole winter. I didn't feel unsafe ever. The only time I really feel unsafe on Winnequa is getting the mail at night in the dark. So I do understand that there's a concern there. I don't have a dog to walk though, but that's fine. So I have a few questions, and I'm not, this is not a dialogue, these are rhetorical questions, so don't get mad at me.
Won't get mad at you.
So what's the data that supports what we're doing here? The need for a sidewalk. Can the needs of the walkers, bikers, drivers, and homeowners on both sides of Winnequa Road be accommodated here? Because I think we are trying to accommodate individual constituencies without accommodating all constituencies. Nice to hear, Josh, by the way, that the trees are, this is the first I'd heard that they're an attempt to avoid taking trees down. Although you have to remember, little trees become big trees. So, and I have a lot of little trees. We have ash trees on our property, some of which will come down, I believe, which we've been paying $1,000 a year to treat and are as healthy as could be. So I'm a little concerned about that. Can we achieve a road with slower speed that makes bikes and walkers comfortable? It seems to me if you have a wider roadway, which we will with 2 wide bike lanes on either side, and and then some trees coming down, large and small, and a sidewalk, you're going to have a larger throughway. And it's human nature that, you know, when I think of sidewalks, I think of the 2 main roads in Milwaukee or in Monona that have sidewalks, Dean Avenue and Nichols Road. They've always had sidewalks. Think about the different character of Nichols Road and Dean Avenue from Winnequa. If that's what we want the doorway to Monona to look like, that's very concerning. But that's kind of where we're headed here. So I'll wrap up quickly. Let's work to retain the character of Winnequa Road. Let's not forget that. And I understand that that isn't in the purview of the engineering field, nor should it be, but we have an obligation to do that. It's the same reason why the planning committee puts developers through the ringer and makes sure that the structures are built to the standards that Monona wants, that they have plantings and trees, and the facade is the way we want it. It's no different when you're redoing a road. So keep as many trees as possible. That was good to hear. Minimum, if we do go ahead with a sidewalk, please, skinny terraces, skinny sidewalks. But I like option 1.5. I hate option 3. I'm opposed to option 3, so maybe that's why I registered that. Let's redo the road. Let's not do what we did before, which was go through an extensive process, build something that is stuck in time, and then we understand then people aren't going to use the sidewalks because they meander too much or the bike lanes are too wide. Let's consider other options. I don't know, one-way street or a bike boulevard, or, you know, and those of us that bike, including my predecessor up here, we bike on shared bikeways and walkways all the time, all the way around the lake. So I appreciate the time and wish you luck in your endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next, I have Mr. and Mrs. Lair. You didn't register to speak or not to speak, so I just was curious what you'd rather what to do.
Yeah, I'll speak.
Okay. Yes, you may. Okay.
I'm a biker and a runner also, extensively. I'm Dave Lehrer. I live at 5801 Winnequa Road. Lived there for 26 years, 27 years. I'm a biker and a runner. I don't feel unsafe on Winnequa Road. We've got half of a dog. She's not very good at walking on any street, but it's not any different on Winnequa Road than others. I'm not in favor of taking down trees and replacing it with concrete. I'm skeptical about the 8-tree count. I've walked up and down there under these various iterations and the measurements change, but right, I'm skeptical about the 8-tree. And you know, I'd question whether our tree count takes into account that we'll be excavating a wider path than the final curb or sidewalk or what have you. So we gotta, when we're counting the trees, we gotta go a foot wider or whatever, because we're gonna be excavating. This 36 inches from the historical wall, my home is the first one from the south that has the historical wall. We have, I measured it this afternoon, on the north end, 42 inches from the existing curb line, the wall. That's not the footing. I rebuilt that wall from the ground up myself over a couple of years as it had deteriorated with the passage of time. So there's a footing underneath the wall. That's 6 inches over from the wall itself. On the north end, I got 42 inches. On the south end, I got 38 inches, plus 6-inch footing. So there's no way, you gotta have some excavation. If the curb line is 36 inches moved over, you're already on the south end, you're already 4 inches into my footing. And that doesn't, I don't care how precise the contractors are, they're gonna excavate 3, 6, 12 inches wider. They gotta put a form in to form the curb and so forth. I haven't measured my neighbors down the way to the north. You stand there and look, it all looks pretty straight. So I don't see any way under the existing scenarios of 2 and 3 where you're not gonna have to pick up the historic wall and move it while you excavate of these dimensions. And I thank the director of State Pay for getting back to me, because the letter was a few feet and right, if it's, and you mentioned it's 36 inches, so I don't see how that fits. And lastly, as was number 1 on Josh's list there from the last public meeting on this subject, everybody raise your hand if you want traffic to slow down. That's the safety issue. And we were told at that meeting, you can't really do that, slowing down traffic, you can't really. But then we heard examples over by the zoo, over in Shorewood Hills, where they've employed strategies to slow down traffic, and it's worked. So slow down traffic, don't cut down trees, don't put down a bunch of concrete. Thank you.
Mrs. Lair?
Okay. Unlike my husband, I hate public speaking, so bear with me. I, in conversations, have heard over and over again that the council wants to hear alternatives. And I agree that there's been alternatives that have been brought to light that have not been given due consideration. And I am frustrated with, we want to make things safer. Okay, well, let's look at alternatives. So that's been very frustrating that hasn't, in my opinion, been given due consideration. I am a biker. I have probably biked thousands and thousands of miles. I'm a 2-time Ironman. I don't hear anything about bikers being accountable on Winnequa Road. I see bikers 3 abreast. I am concerned that if you're single file, you don't need 6.5 feet if you're riding single file. So I'm not sure where that data is coming from, but I would hope that bikers would be held to the same rules as cars. They should be stopping at the stop sign. They should be single file, not 3 abreast. This was a big issue in Verona when the Ironman came to town. They got tickets, and it quickly came to light. If you're a biker, you follow the rules of the road. We do not see that in Monona. And I feel very passionate. Who are we catering to here? Are we catering to the citizens of Monona? Or are we catering to the Monona Loop? Lack of trees. 8 trees, maybe. But it's concrete. It's concrete, and once it's there, it's not going away. They're stressed. Who said they were stressed? A UW student. In my opinion, that doesn't cut it. Property owners. Who's going to remove the snow? If anybody, I will be more than happy to send pictures of the amount of leaves that we have to dispose of on our properties. Where are we going to put them? The city of Monona is not going to come and pick them up. So please, let's be real here. Where is that snow? That snow is going to butt up against the historic wall. And if the excavation doesn't ruin that wall, plowing against it will. These are common sense things that I feel are just, I'm sorry, but sometimes I want to hit my head against the wall. It's like, you can't push up a bunch of snow against that rock wall. It's not going to hold. Where are all the leaves going to go? In the sidewalks. I did this in 2019. I showed the disrepair of the sidewalks already in Monona, where people are falling and getting hurt because the sidewalks are in disrepair. We don't even take care of the sidewalks that we have. So I'm frustrated. I'm hoping for more transparency. I'm hoping we can look at other options. I think we all want the same thing here. I think we're struggling on how to get that.
Thank you. Next, we'll have Mike Momans.
Thank you. Mike Mullins, 5800 Winnequa Road. I spoke on Monday, and I'll try to keep it shorter than that, especially considering a couple of the topics have been addressed, but I do have my copies of my Monday items. Couple of things. Character was mentioned. The character of the Frostwoods and the South Winnequa portion is very important. Cement was mentioned. Going back to 1938, when my home was built, and most of the Frostwoods Association on Winnequa Road was built about that same time, the access points were limited. There are 4 shared driveways on South Winnequa, including in my section 3 and the one in the 6,000 block where the Stutes are. So cement was important to reduce it at the beginning of the implementation of the neighborhood. So we also talked about data. As of Friday, we received some information from the police department and from Alder Goforth, so thank you for that. And on Friday, unfortunately, there was an accident at Winnequa Bridge where there was an injury. But prior to that, in the previous 5 years, there was only 5 accidents on that stretch of road. 5 accidents in 5 years total. Now there's a 6th, and that's unfortunate, obviously. So the accidents are very limited on that stretch. Over that same time period, there were 1,900 accidents in Monona. 5 on Winnequa Road on the south end. During your presentation from Strand, and thank you for that, Josh, snow removal was talked about. But as my neighbor Mary said, leaves are equally important. Between our 3 homes, the Caspers, the Wares, and mine, there's going to be 2 walls, or there are 2 walls, but there's now potentially going to be a sidewalk and bike lanes and no place for leaves. My calculations are that over the course of 3 weekends each year, I put out about 500 cubic feet of leaves each weekend. I have a wooded yard. I have a lot of leaves. That's 1,500 cubic feet over that month time period. Nowhere to put it. The sea's not gonna come into my yard and take it. I realize that, but I need somewhere to put it. And now I put it on the bike lane, which the city allows, but that's not safe. If there's 2 historic walls and a sidewalk, the leaves will not adhere, they don't adhere, but they hug the wall now and stay there. With a sidewalk next to it, they're gonna spread. The wind's gonna get at it and they're gonna spread into the road, creating more safety hazard than we currently have, especially from both sides of the street. Again, 500 cubic feet I put out a weekend. And we need that addressed of not only the snow, which will deteriorate the walls and has deteriorated my wall, and the wall in front of the corner of Margara and Winnequa, that wall is completely deteriorated. So snow has an impact. Leaves have a huge impact. And it's only a month out of the year. I do some in April too, but the major is October, November, and there's just no place to put them. And it's not just my yard. It's dozens of yards along the stretch, but especially where the 2 walls are going to be with the potential of the sidewalk. So I think that needs to be addressed and why I'm against the sidewalks in 4 option 3. Or I mean, against option 3 and 4 option 1. So the character of the neighborhood needs to be maintained. That does not include putting more concrete. And we need to address the leaves and the other problems. And just, it's been talked about walking on Winnequa. I find it completely safe. My wife and I walk our dogs nearly every day, sometimes at 5 o'clock. I don't have a problem with it. I'm safe. I wear reflective material. My dog leashes have reflective materials. My dogs don't pay attention to me, but they do try and stay out of the traffic. So I wanted to restate those couple of things, and thanks again for your time.
Thank you. All right, next we'll have Kurt Stute.
Good evening, my name is Kurt Stute. I live at 6003 Winnequa Road. I've lived in Monona since I was a year old. I've walked and run and biked and driven on these roads since I was 4 years old. Not driving at 4, but I will say that I have never felt unsafe doing any of those activities on Winnequa Road, with 2 exceptions. And that said, I do understand the perception of safety issues that are on that road, so I understand what's driving the desire for the sidewalks and some of the changes. But I personally never felt it. I've never felt a problem either taking my children or pets when walking dogs on those roads either. 2 exceptions are, since we've had the bump outs, biking and watching bikes go around bump outs, that definitely has never made me feel unsafe because I ride on the bump out, but I understand why people don't. So I can understand how that creates an unsafe condition, and also the speed on that road. That's the thing that's always concerned me, was watching cars flying down there, sometimes 55, 60 miles an hour at the high end, probably an average at least around 40 miles an hour, if not more. My biggest concern with sidewalks, I am speaking in favor of option 1 and against specifically option 3, 2 and 3, but my biggest concern is saving trees and the character of Monona. I understand what you're saying, that in options 1 and 2, we'd only lose 5 mature trees. In option 3, we'd only lose 11, possibly 8, depending on how you look at it, mature trees. That ignores a whole lot of smaller trees and a lot of landscaping. And it also kind of ignores the fact that once that concrete's down, trees aren't going to regrow there. So they're gone forever once in those areas, once they're gone. And looking at speed, the wider a road is, the faster people are going to drive. I am very heartened that all 3 of the options include speed humps. I question whether 3 is enough, but I am very happy that that has been added to all 3 options. As much as I hate the bump outs, one thing they actually did do was control speed to some extent. They actually, that was what they were put in for, and they were somewhat effective at that. So when those go away, that's another thing that's going to make the road feel wider and make people more inclined to drive fast down that road. Taking out more landscaping and trees for sidewalks, it's also going to make that road feel wider, make people more inclined to drive faster down that road. I am concerned about budget. The numbers that were given, it's not a huge difference. It ends up being around $400,000 difference between option 1 and option 3. I think that kind of ignores the impact of maintenance. Long-term, maintenance is going to cost money, so that's an added ongoing giving factor. I am somewhat concerned about the sidewalks that do exist in Monona, and my experience is that they're not well maintained, so maybe that's how we're going to save the money, is not maintain them, but that's not better. So I also want to talk about, I'm a little bit concerned about, we're kind of waving our hands at the services for the people from Owen up to Maywood Road. The way those roads are, particularly if we move the curbs, as we talked about, garbage becomes interesting. Where are you going to put it? How are they going to collect it? Mail becomes interesting. I've heard some discussion of maybe requiring people to cross the street to get their mail. Leaves are definitely a problem that I think are underestimated. I've seen what Mike puts out on his sidewalk in his side area there. So, and it, he's not the only one, but that area definitely does generate a lot of leaves. And then the snow removal and the impact on any vegetation that's left, or those walls that are along the road there, and the deterioration that would cause. Last thing I want to talk about a little bit is parking. The one thing that distresses me on option 1 is with the restriping. It sounds to me like the way it's currently set up with the parking lane that's not really a parking lane, 2 biking lanes and the 2 driving lanes. The beautiful part about that is that parking lane that's not really a parking lane, it becomes a walking lane in the summer. And then in the winter, we got a nice arrangement now where that shifts to becoming a parking area. And I was very much against losing parking in 2019 when that went away. I found that it really doesn't impact me during the summer. And I kind of like not having all the landscaping vehicles parked there that push everybody out into the roadway. That said, in the winter, it's a completely different story. We don't have the huge driveways that they do north of Owen. We got lots of elevation features that make parking in our driveways difficult sometimes. When my in-laws, who are in their 80s, come over at Christmas, if they can't park in the street, or if I don't make special arrangements to make sure they're the ones who park in our driveway and we park in the street, whatever, now we're forcing them to cross the road, cross Winnequa Road in January, or December, January, February. We're potentially making people cross the street to get the mail. We're creating actual safety hazards to address the perception of safety hazards. I think we're actually going to create more injuries and accidents than currently exist by getting rid of that parking in the winter along the west-hand side of the road. So my request is, hey, when you repaint it like it is now. It actually works really well, given that walking lane in the summer and that parking in the winter. So again, my proposal is option 1, but no parking stalls. Parking stalls are just going to take out more trees or landscaping, and they're also going to promote faster speed. So 2 major negatives, and just leave the striping as it is. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
I got another one later that I hadn't read yet. Ron Binsley of 713 Magora Road would like to register to speak, or register against the sidewalk, not to speak. Okay, so that concludes the in-person folks that want to speak. Although, Alder Goforth? you had sent that email. Did you want to speak instead?
No, I just, are you able to share that email or my concepts in that? I
Well-
will speak otherwise.
It'd probably be easier if you just spoke.
Okay,
I mean, the committee will get the email, but
do you have it? Okay. I don't have that in front of me.
here.
Oh, great. Appreciate that. Chrissy Goforth, 4515 Gordon Avenue. Always have to adjust the mic down. Yeah, I sent an email earlier today. I apologize for the late notice. I just asked for a few things to be considered. In addition, I do agree that we seem to be locked on this sidewalk or no sidewalk option. So like a very far black and white separate issues. And we all want the same thing. And there's so many options in between that we could achieve to decrease the speed and increase safety for all users. So I really wish that a bike boulevard concept could be considered for this corridor. In the Strand plans, it's even called a bike boulevard, because it really is right now with that number of users. If we're getting about 1,000 a day on weekends, if you total that up, we're over 100,000 in a year. So that's easily bike boulevard volume. The new B-cycle stations that we have been very heavily used this year. They've actually ranked as some of the most popular B-cycle stations in the Madison area. If you think about, I don't know if you saw the report in 2018 about the economic impact of bicycling in the state of Wisconsin. It contributes $1.4 billion to the state and provides over 13,000 jobs. And this is why so many communities are investing in tourism and bicycle infrastructure. I feel like we could really, if we went with the bike boulevard concept, we could, tap into that tourism market and help our local business community by driving more business to them and people buying ice cream or visiting our parks or visiting Buck and Honey's and other restaurants like that. My other requests were, it sounds like a lot of cars are not stopping at the stop signs on Bridge Road. So I didn't know if a lighted stop sign option could be considered with a little solar panel. Not sure if that would work, if there's enough light that comes through the canopy there. And then I also wanted to ask that we test out the one-way south traffic pattern for a couple of weeks. If we could move some of that traffic volume that is using Winnequa Road as a cut through to avoid the lights, I think that could really help solve so many of our problems. I know when I was running the chamber, one of my biggest challenges was in attracting businesses to Monona Drive was the low traffic volume, the low cars per day, 14,000 to 16,000 cars per day on Monona Drive. Fish Hatchery with a similar design sees 40,000 a day. Actually, those stats are old. Those are about 5 years old. Fish Hatchery is way over that now. And so even if we had 1,000 cars shift up to Monona Drive and do what we want them to do and use our main streets, that could help a lot, I think, with the Winnequa Road issues. So yeah, I hope we'll consider another option, lots of options, a bicycle boulevard option as well. Thank you.
So that concludes the in-person folks. Brad, do we have folks that want to speak that are online? I guess if you do want to speak online, if you could either raise your hand via Zoom or speak up and I can call on you.
Yeah, I prompted everybody by writing in the chat module to say that they should raise their hands. Nobody rose their hands. We have one message here from John and Mary Rowe. They live on Winnequa Road. Says that they were in favor of option 1.
Hearing none, I'm going to move to the other item that we have people registered for, which is parking on Shore Acres. I have a couple people that wish to speak on that, and then we'll move on with the rest of our agenda. So The first person I'd like to have come speak is Pam Palmeyer.
I'm Pam Palmeyer. I live on 4305 Shore Acres Road. Just recently, there has been posted alternate parking. This is a one-way. At first, I was concerned about the size of the street as far as the width. But I drove around and I saw it's not that bad. The issue is that it's a one-way. So the drivers get out, they park, it's fine on one side, but on the other side, if they get out, they're getting out on their driver's side. Which means there's always a driver. So they're getting out on the curb, they're getting on the grass. Elderly people have a hard time getting out with snow. What are we gonna do? If there's snow there, they're gonna have to park way over to get out. So that's a big concern. So that's really one of my biggest concerns is how do they get out of their car? Which also brings me to, since this has started, it's a one-way. I've seen several cars driving the wrong way. That's kind of always been a problem, but since we went to this, I walked my dog today at lunch, 2 cars and a tree trimmer. He even said, "I'm sorry," through the window. A lot more cars are driving the wrong way. It's always been a little bit of a problem, but it's been a lot of a problem now. So I see that more often, going down quicker. So my understanding when this all happened is that it was because of the leaf pickup. So you guys just hit the block of 4300. The next block over from Cold Springs and Dean, they're one-way too, but they can park on just one side. They didn't get hit. So I'm confused why they don't get affected by brush pickup and leaf pickup, but just our block is. So what makes our block different for leaf pickup as theirs? So we were told alternate parking because of that. Why don't they have alternate parking? Some of their vehicles sit there for days on just one side. I watched a truck sit there for over a week, never moved. So that's a problem to me. Why is our block treated different? So that's why I am against it. I really can't think of anything else, but and I also think that we have this meeting here for Winnequa Road. Why don't we have this meeting for questions, answers, ideas for our part of the road? I know Winnequa is a lot bigger, our street is smaller, but it does affect us. I've been there for 20 years, my husband's lived there all his life. Just one day the signs were up. Who gets it? We didn't. So I'm totally against it. I've seen a lot of negative changes, and I hope you guys will reconsider. Just keep it on one side. The last 20 years I've been there, it wasn't a problem, so I don't know why it is today. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Jeff Berg speaking for informational purposes.
Hello, I'm Jeff Berg. I live at 4313 Shore Acres. There's a couple of houses down the road there. A lot of you probably remember me from the meeting here last month. In addition to what Pam said, I want to call out the safety concerns that we've seen. As I called out in the last meeting, it's not just the cars that come down our street the wrong way. There's bicycles that come down the wrong way on that street all the time. People who are, doing the lake movement with a little bit of variation and come down the street the wrong way. So an odd number of days now, when we've got cars parked on the left side of the road and bikes are coming down, bikes aren't going and moving to the right side of the street to stay visible. They're staying on the left side of the street like they would usually do. That means they're riding right down alongside parked cars, and you cannot see them. 3 times I've almost hit bikes coming down the wrong side of the street on odd number days because I can't see them. How many more? How long until one of them is not at your place? So figure out a way to get the parking off that side. And, you know, it was last February, Tim came in, presented a petition to the committee here. For whatever reason, wasn't acknowledged. But we have the signatures of everybody on the block except for one house saying, put it back. So, you know, whatever you're gonna do, but please get the parking off the odd side of the street because it's a safety hazard. Thanks.
And then we have Candace Verberg.
I'm Candace Verberg, Jeff's wife. I live at 4313 Shore Acres Road, and we've lived there for 20 years. And Roger has lived there for 35 years, and Jan's lived there for 50 years. And anyway, so historically, this road has been a one-way street with parking on the east side. It's always been that way. There's never been a problem. But all of a sudden, we gotta make, everybody dance for the sake of the 3 times that the utility workers come through to pick up leaves and brush without the high school parking on it. Because this is all about high school parking. High school park, they've never had a problem with this. High school kids, they park on the east side. The thing of it is, it's an alluvial plain that slopes down to the lake. So there's a slope. So this, on the west side of the street, it's more wooded, it's obscured. There's historical neighbor Cindy Stiles, whose father was a founding father of Monona, was a full acre historical 110-year-old property there, fully wooded, we're wooded, and on the other side of the street is not, and especially been losing trees, and I don't know when they're gonna replace them, but they have a clear shot of traffic coming because of the slope, the lay of the land. And I don't know why this has been so impossible for people to understand, but I told that to Danny Stefani. In the COVID period, people, when we got this notice, oh, hey, this is a great idea, and nobody took it seriously, I don't think. But everybody was in this COVID crisis. And so people are just frozen up in their houses and not doing anything. So then I talked to, and then it was like, well, there's gonna be a public meeting. Well, then this is like the same day that we get a lockdown for a global pandemic. Now, this is the timing of this. And my husband, by the way, was flying into the storm to Singapore to advise the Ministry of Health over there. So he's been real busy with his work. And so it fell to me to like, okay, let's drop a petition. We, the people of the 4300 block of Shore Acres Road, to hereby petition to revoke the rename that we get a lockdown for a global pandemic. Alternate side parking ordinance, odd even 8 a.m. to 8 a.m., and therewith restore the well-established historic parking norm of the one side east parking. This ordinance is unsafe due to the sloping curve of the road and foliage. Pushing this enormous change through during this pandemic when neighbors are not communicating is inhumane as well. Now, I don't know, everybody has this petition, and
just to correct my husband, we've got signatures of all property owners on the west side, and we have 3 property owners on the east side that all think that this is nonsensical government overreach, puts us in harm's way, and has been ignored. And only with my husband speaking at the last meeting was it determined that all of this, 365 days a year, 8 a.m. to 8 a.m., for 3 times a year that they come around to remove brush and leaves without high school parking. Now, the solution to this is clear. Schedule street maintenance on these blocks before and after school using temporary no parking signs as needed. This is a simple solution. This is not rocket science. And why this is actually undemocratic, un-American, and it makes me absolutely livid. People live and die for this country, for the liberty, the freedom of oppressive government, and this is what we got going on. And that, my lord, is the case for the defense.
Brad, we have someone with their hand raised.
Yep,
Do they?
Ted Marino would like to speak.
Okay, do we have any others?
No, that was it.
Okay. Mr. Marino, if you'd like to speak.
Hi, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. First of all, I'd like to thank whoever began making an effort to make sure that the city could pick up our leaves. Because I noticed, I live on the 4300 block of Shore Acres, and I noticed that when the teenagers do park on our block, the city's not able to pick up the leaves. Having teenagers park on your street sucks a little bit. It's a little bit inconvenient, and I think it provides a little bit of a hazard, especially if you have kids. So in terms of finding a solution to be able to get our leaves picked up, I don't think the solution is to put any more inconvenience on the people who live on the street. I think the solution needs to be looked at in terms of what we can do to get the teenagers out of the way. Because the people who live there, we're not parking in front of our own leaves. So I think if you're looking at solutions, you know, I think there's other solutions to look at and to discuss. You know, I wouldn't be opposed to parking passes for people who could park on the street. I wouldn't be opposed to more money going into public transportation, so we don't have all of these kids parking on our street. I wouldn't be opposed to improving school transportation. But we're already paying for the high school kids to go to school. So to then lose more accessibility to our street, to make it easier for them to continue to park on the street or easier to pick up leaves, it doesn't make any sense to me. It doesn't make any sense that A, it stinks to have teenagers driving down your block, and then B, to get even less accessibility to your street because they're in the way of the leaves. I think that's all I have to say. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I'm so proud of myself.
Thank you, Mr. Marino.
Yeah, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Is there anyone else either online or in the room that wishes to speak on either agenda item or something else this evening? Yes. If you could go up to the podium and state your name.
And address. Thank you.
One thing that went through my mind as I was listening to my neighbors, we are very lucky that there are less high school students parking in our area this year because of the virtual option. So where Teddy lives, there's hardly anybody parking in front of his house right now. And likewise for Pam and I, we live at the end where the Restore is, and there's less kids parking there. But I think what bothers me the most is all the other streets that have high school parking, like Lofty, Parkway, and Gordon and Wallace. Those parking regulations are in effect from September 1st to June 15th, weekdays 8 to 4 that are not holidays. So it's not weekends, it's not during their vacation time. And I don't understand why for us, it's all year round forever. I mean, it's just, there's no days off. But on weekends, the police have been checking our street. The first day the kids came back to school, we had 7 kids on the end where Candace and Jeff live that were parked headed the wrong way. So the kids could get out on the street rather than the woods, because that wooded lot, it's very hard to get out on that side because of all the bushes and flowers and whatever. So the police gave them tickets. That took care of that. But we still, on the weekends, we still have residents parking on both sides of the street. And I have to admit that Teddy does sometimes park in front of his leaves, okay? Because I live just across from Teddy. So it's, some of these things you've heard of have not been accurate. I'm the one that's lived here for 42 years. And I have never felt less safe on that street. Part of it is the one-way problem because the Amazon vans apparently can't read do not enter, and they come bombing down our street with these big vans. That is not at all with the parking regulations. It's just a problem that we've had with more and more traffic coming down the wrong way. And some of the teenagers do it because they go and pick up people and they just come in the wrong way, or they go out the wrong way because it's closer to the school. So that's been a problem for many years. So I agree, we all feel we wish we could go back to the way it was, and that it could be just, well, the brush pickup is always like the second week, and there's really only a couple months when the kids are there. I mean, they're not there in June and August. It would just be basically April and October. And it would be easy to just put temporary parking for the week that the brush has to be picked up. And I don't know, the Public Works would have to decide on the leaf pickup, because there are going to be kids parked on the end by Cold Spring that the people would not be able to get their leaves picked up. That has been a problem for years. But if they could temporarily put the no parking.
What?
That would be good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, what was your name and address, please?
Jan Hirschfeld, 4307 Shore Acres.
Okay, thank you.
Right. Anyone else wish to speak this evening? Hearing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the appearances section for this evening. We'll move on to item number 6, because we have no unfinished business in number 5. Item 6, new business. Discussion and consideration of South Winnaco preliminary design options and for presentation at October 21st public information meeting. All right. So I don't know if folks remember, but for our budget discussion several months ago, we actually voted to not include the sidewalks as part of our budget discussion for the South Winnaco project. It was put back into the mayor's budget and is now on consideration as part of the 2022 capital budget. And as a result of that, the design the designs you see in front of you are options as part of the capital budget. So we had asked, the Public Works Committee is being asked to consider these 3 designs that have been presented by Josh. And do you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, that's pretty much it, pretty straightforward. The options coming from the mayor for this committee to review, going to the public information meeting, I think at some point, like Alder Coorer said, that this committee should provide a recommendation moving forward. I don't know if that's tonight or if that's the evening of October 21st, in conjunction with the public information meeting.
Thomas.
Can I ask Josh some questions?
Yeah.
Which seem, I mean, I have some specific questions and then I have general questions and then I have comments, but I'll ask the questions first. So, we have, if the sidewalks go in, options 1 and 2 call for moving the curb over closer to the wall.
2 and 3.
2 and 3, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, right.
Option 1 would leave the curbs
Okay.
where they are today.
So my questions are for those properties and for Whitty and for Mullen. What do we do about leaves? What do we do about brush? What do we do about mailboxes? What do we do about narrow driveways where there may not be room to get a car out if there's a garbage can parked there?
So your question, Kathy, is on the north section, where if we move the curbs, so if we move the curbs 3 feet west, we put that curb right up against the wall. I'm not disputing that that's going to be a challenge and would have to be carefully done. And then we'd also have a sidewalk up against the other wall. So you have that continued piece of pretty much pavement in that north section. So what would you do with, let's say, first the leaves in the brush? It would be very similar to what is being done along the wall today. It's going to be piled up on the sidewalk or on the road until it's picked up, which is the same thing that's happening.
On the other side, it's going to have to go in the street,
It's just like it does today.
and it'll go in the bike lane,
Yep,
which will mean it's dangerous for bikers.
yep, just like it is. I mean, you can't get by that unless you remove one of the walls.
Okay.
Mhm.
Brush pickup?
Yep. Yep.
What do we-
Unless it gets taken to a different spot.
What do we do with brush pickup?
Same way we would do it today.
Yeah.
Got the walls.
Mailbox?
I mean, where does the brush go? It has to go either in the driveway or along the road.
You can't, I mean, mailboxes?
So the mailboxes, there's a few options for mailboxes. Either have to be put on the other side of the road where there's some space, mounted on the decorative wall, which you could do, or just behind the decorative wall so no one moves. Or potentially core it in the sidewalk and have it in within the sidewalk as long as you have 36 inches of ADA space around the back.
Okay.
So there's several things you can do for this.
From my perspective, either from a safety standpoint or a responsibility to the taxpayers, those don't seem reasonable solutions to me. I mean, if I lived there, I would be furious.
Yeah.
And you know, someone talked about the accident that occurred this weekend. That was someone in the crosswalk, crossing the street at the crosswalk. So the sidewalk wouldn't have prevented that, and what we're doing is forcing people, some people, if we move mailboxes to cross the street. I mean, it is, so my next question then, but and I'll sum it up later, but my other question is, if we get down to where Byers' house is, Oswegan's house, Whitty's house, and they choose, if they would choose to put the sidewalk behind the trees to save them. At dusk or at night, that's very dark back there. You know, and people have raised the question, are you safer walking on the street or are you safer walking behind bushes, which are unlit and considered unsafe? And have we thought about, I mean, are there examples of where that has worked in other places? I mean, it just.
Yeah, you're asking pretty broad questions.
I am.
I
am.
So I should state something. Maybe I should have stated it at the beginning. There's not a silver bullet for this. Not gonna find one. all the stuff that's put in now is minimum. You're gonna find a hard time to find a civil engineer that has a degree and takes an oath in public safety to approve the plan that was approved last time. I don't even think they stamped it last time, Dan. I think maybe it was pushed through and then the council did it. All these things that you already have there are minimum. Minimum lane widths, minimum bike widths, minimum parking, they don't even meet standards. So we can try to re-engineer this as much as we want, but it's gonna involve moving a wall that is historic and actually taking some of the 100-foot right-of-way to do it right. Now, yes, Kathy, there is things that we can do as far as remove bump outs, try to fit a sidewalk in, and we can go, but you're still gonna be flirting those lines of things that aren't that desirable. Because you can't get rid of them all. There's no possible way to get rid of them all. And there's some things that people are gonna suggest we do that I'm gonna feel as a professional engineer, and others that probably won't even approve the plans or even wanna draw them up for you. Just because they're all out of the realm of what you would typically do to follow the standards. So there's standards in our industry. They're called, the standards that we all follow as engineers. They're laid out in guidance and in restrictions and in codes. If we don't follow them and somebody gets hurt, guess who's responsible? The person who did it, because they didn't follow that. So we gotta be careful on what we do, what we can't do. So a lot of these things, we're flirting the line already, Kathy.
Yeah, I know.
On a lot of those we are. We really are. So the hard part with this whole project is we can spend a lot of money. You could convert the road to a one-way, right? And that's been asked numerous times. It's a collector street. It's characterized as something else. The county's MPO would have to get behind you and say, okay, you're switching that. The funding wouldn't, the funding's going to change. Fine, 100% fine. The 2,000 vehicles of traffic that would head north would have to disperse somewhere else in the community now. Maybe that's fine. Maybe all the other residents feel like those are going to go in a different spot, and that's okay. But then we're going to say, well, then we'll just move the traffic over on a one-way where they will go faster because there's no opposing traffic. That's pretty much shown to be true. You can shake your head, but there's plenty of studies that show that.
Absolutely not true. You have no idea.
We can't take comments from the.
Okay. So, well, anyways, it will go faster one way, and you're going to put bikes and peds that walk right next to them. You wouldn't do that. I wouldn't stamp that. I'd say we have to raise that, we have to remove that, we have to remove that conflict. We would not put the two next to each other like that. So we gotta reconstruct the roadway. It's gonna cost more. It will cost more than to do these other alternatives. That's some of this has come down to cost. Some of it has come down to, what we can do and what we can't do. And you're not gonna find a silver bullet here. You will not find a silver bullet unless you wanna clean the slate and start over. But then you're gonna have a lot of impacts when you do it that way.
Yeah, to sort of finish up, I have probably lost more hours of sleep thinking about Winnequa Road than I have slept for the past few months. I have lived on that street, across the street now on the lakeside for 50 years. I quite honestly, personally, have never felt unsafe, and I've gone walking on there with my 101-year-old mother, but I don't walk when there's, I don't drive on the Beltline during rush hour, and I try not to walk at 5:30 at night. I walk and many times of the day, there's very little traffic on there, bikers or cars, so it feels perfectly safe to me when I walk there. So I think I'm on the horns of a dilemma about is what we are doing to the character of the neighborhood and to some of the homes and the inconveniences, because as someone stated, we are trying to please the drivers, the bikers, the pedestrians, and the homeowners who live there, who have some rights and who has the most rights. And it is clear that I don't know that there's a good solution to the problem. I don't think the solution we have now in front of us is with the sidewalks is a good option. I'm not sure, because people will have to walk across the street, some of them to get to the sidewalk, or other people will have to do it to get potentially their mail. And people have, in my mind, people have brought up other options which we haven't looked at, like bicycle boulevards, which I don't know if I want bikes taking over Winnequa Road, but I've never experienced them, so they might work. I've always said, one way won't work. But I haven't been very creative in ever trying to, nor have we, in trying to think. And one of the things that I think that we have not done, as I go through Madison has worked to slow down. If I go in the Isthmus area, and I'm going to Jennifer Street Market, they have no turns and they have speed humps and they do things to try and slow traffic. I don't think, quite honestly, and I take some responsibility, that we've done much to try and do those same measures in Monona, and yet speeding is a huge thing on every street for everybody. So having said that, I'm on the horns of a dilemma about whether we rush, and I will tell you all, I don't know if I said this at the beginning, when the last reconstruction project on Winnequa was done with the bump outs, I was on the council. It was a bad design, it was a waste of money, and it was stupid, and I truly don't want to do that again. Which is, so you know, I think there's a lot to think about after listening to everyone.
Tim.
Well, you really learn a lot from people who live in the neighborhood. You know, I don't live in that neighborhood. I bike, I drive, I do all of that stuff like everybody else. But I learned a lot and a lot of different perspectives on things. So these are no in particular order. I think they just kind of came up as people came up, and as I ran out of space in that column, I went over to another column. There was a mention, I think, Mike, you had mentioned this, that the wall that's by your house is deteriorating.
The one next door to me at the corner of Montgomery and Winnequa, and I've heard their address. Yeah, that's the one.
Just to the north.
Yes.
Just to the north, there's like, they have a smaller wall there, right?
Yes.
With a few courses, it's
It's
kind of
no
falling
problem-
apart.
It's no problem to pay it several times, that's part of it.
Okay. Whose wall is that? Is that the homeowners or is that our wall?
Don't know that question. No, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know how to answer
It's
that.
the homeowners wall, the short wall?
No, the one on the east
It's
side
in the
of the
right
street.
way, right? That wall is in the right way, so.
So it'd be city.
No,
And
no, they're not some responsible walls.
Yeah, I don't know.
who put them in originally then?
I don't know, but the city does not maintain any retaining walls in the city right away.
Just like the historic wall, right? I mean, that's in city right away too. You know,
Okay. Well, is that something that, if it's deteriorating now, is it something that those walls might need to be rebuilt?
The goal is not to touch those walls, so leave them.
Well, that's not really my question, though.
I don't
Are
think
they
the
bad
big
enough
wall,
where
I don't
they
think
need
the
to be
big wall
rebuilt?
needs to be rebuilt. The other wall, I'm not even sure it needs to be there. I'm sure you can get rid of it.
Because potentially that could buy us a little more space.
So the hard part with this is Legislative Act, oh, I could get this wrong, 59 in 2017 was passed, and you cannot take right away for eminent domain to put in sidewalks for bike lanes anywhere. So in order to remove that wall and replace it, I'm gonna have to go on his property to do it. And if he doesn't want us to, how can we do that? Now, we could do it for the road's sake, but we could not do it if he does not want to give us permission for a bike or pedestrian walk. But we could do it for the road's sake or for the wall's sake. Yeah. So there's just, I mean, there's multiple questions within that, of how we would get that done.
Is it, somewhere along the way, I remember that it's not appropriate to have a bicycle lane and a pedestrian lane. They're not supposed to be the same. So us having a bicycle lane that we now are encouraging people to walk in?
Yeah, I don't think there would be any place that we would encourage a pedestrian to walk in bike lanes, but that is sort of the Monona standard.
It is the Monona standard.
Yeah.
So there's
But
no-
not the common practice standard.
So like the bicycle boulevards downtown Madison, they are bicycles and cars.
They're
That's
bicycles
what
and
makes
cars.
them a,
Yes.
but not a pedestrian.
They're bicycles and cars, pedestrians are separated on the sidewalk.
And minimum width for a sidewalk is 36 inches.
Or ADA to get around it. I would say the common practice is 4 to 5 feet wide is the sidewalk.
Right, that seems right.
Jennifer, did you have something that you wanted to?
Just wanted to ask about the sidewalk since you brought it up. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
For a second. So the sidewalk, if we get 36 inches though, don't we have to put in a 5-foot square every 200 feet? If we did a 36-inch sidewalk?
So where we would propose a 36 inches if we were gonna get around an obstruction. So let's say it would all be 5-foot width, but there was a mailbox that would have to be put in. We'd have to make sure that around that obstruction, there's 36 inches. But on the other side of that obstruction, in your case, you'd have your 5 feet.
But can't you do 36 inches as a standard and then just put 5-foot squares?
Maybe, I don't know. I haven't ever done that.
Okay.
If I look into it, maybe that's like the bare minimum, yeah.
Okay.
That you'd have the 36 inches.
There was a mention as well about how quickly the road has deteriorated. And we're proposing a mill and overlay. Inch and a half, that's, I think, a little bit more than what we usually do.
We typically do inch and a half.
Okay, usually that's it. But if the base is bad, are we going to be looking at that? I know we do that in other areas.
Yeah,
where they kind of map it and say, oh, here's a spot where the base needs to be replaced.
Once you remove that top layer, we go through and find out where the additional depth milling is needed.
Okay.
So if there's potholing that goes down to the roadbed, then that's an area that we go deeper. Probably 90–95% of the mill and overlay we've done, the surface course removing the surface course has proved that the failure hasn't gone deeper. So on South Winnequa, there are areas where there's potholing, but we haven't found the potholing has gone down to the roadbed. If it does, there will be money and bid line items to go deeper as needed to repair the roadbed.
So you could replace
Yeah.
that.
And some of that's already in the estimate, Dan. We
Yeah.
have a little bit of that in the estimate to
Right.
fix some of those. There are some softer spots that you can kind of see.
Yeah.
on the road. So we have a little bit of that built in, like Dan would for his typical kind of overlay projects. Yeah.
Just a couple more things here.
Yeah.
So south end of Winnequa, of this area that we're talking about, confused north, is we're talking about a 6.5-foot bike lane.
The south portion would be 6.5 feet.
Oh, and down. I'm
Yep.
saying 6.5
Yep.
foot.
Yep.
And that would be on each side.
That would be on each side.
Is it? And then on the north side, it's narrower?
It's narrower because the street is narrower.
Okay, so it is
Actually,
narrow.
again, we're gonna try to leave the curbs where they are.
But
so
minimum is 5 feet.
next to the curb, minimum would be 4 feet with the curb. A lot of places are going wider now because they feel that's not enough for bikes, especially when you have a lot of bikes,
Yeah.
even if they single file.
As the bicyclist said, they should be going single file.
Yeah.
Okay. And the only other comment that I was going to make was that we have 3 of the speed bumps.
Yeah.
Or at least as we saw the stuff from Pella, Iowa, they like calling them speed cushions. I like
Speed
that.
cushions.
It's all in the marketing.
Yeah,
It's all in the marketing.
speed cushions, I like that.
So, and 3 doesn't, in that space, just doesn't seem like it's enough.
We can add more. So here's one thing about the speed humps, okay? And I think we heard it from the bicyclists too, is they don't want them through the bike lane. So you'd probably put them just in the drive lane. That's assuming people aren't going to cheat the system, right? And you can always add more in. Those are actually things you can just cut the asphalt, form them up, and put them in. If they're not part of a project, or they come or go, or if you ever wanted to take one out, it's not actually that difficult. They don't get poured into the curb. They're kind of a separate unit that goes in there. So we could.
As we saw in North.
Yeah, we could add some if you wanted to. Do you want to put a bunch in to start, or do you want to put kind of 3 in spaced out evenly with a stop sign at Maywood and stop sign at Bridge and see how it works? That seems to be kind of the first kind of good feel for that, the step, and you could always add some if you wanted to add some.
Very good, thank you.
Josh, how long is that? What length is the road that we're talking about from Bridge to Maywood?
I should know that question.
It's different.
Not the width, the length, so.
The length from
yes.
Maywood to
What's a mile down the Moira?
John? Same thing tonight back there? I'm gonna measure it right now.
I was thinking something like.
So from Maywood to Bridge, it is,
It's about a mile from Bridge to Moira.
it is 3,200 feet from Maywood to Bridge Road.
Okay.
So a mile is 5,280.
I mean, a half mile, it's a
So
half
it's
mile.
a little over half a mile.
It's half mile from Bridge to
0.6
Moira.
is pretty close, right? Yeah.
Because isn't standard for speed humps like one every 500 feet?
Yes, I mean, yeah, sometimes they'll go every 500. It's weird, sometimes they'll even stack them two of them close to each other because they feel like that controls speed a little bit better. So they'll put one and then another one, so you kind of feel two of them and you slow down more. There's a lot of guidance and a lot of different opinions on how far, but yes. 500 feet, plus you got the two stop signs, so you kind of come in 500 feet, go within 1,000, and then start to place them. And I guess that, honestly, those kind of decisions, if we move forward with speed humps, can still be figured out through final design. I think right now we're trying to find, I think the goal would be is how do we move forward, right? Like, what do we really want to see here? When I asked the Public Works group here, do we take these three options forward to the public meeting? Do we want to see something else? Do we want to do something different? You know, we're trying to listen to them as the comments are coming back, but then at the same time, we have a budget we're trying to stay within as far as how much road work we really want to redo, you know, on this road, which is tough, right? Really tough. How much money do you want to spend on a road that you did 13 years ago or whatever it is? It's tough to reconstruct a road, right?
So there's a question about, so Mike's driveway, we do the sidewalk portion, there's needs to be some changes to the grade of his driveway.
Yeah.
Theoretically speaking, if we selected option 2, would we go forward with changing the grade of his driveway, even though it's just as a future potential sidewalk plan?
No, we would not really have to do it at that point. We would be pulling the curb 3 feet further away, so we would blend back in, and I think his driveway would be a little less steep to start, and matching that back up. And he'd have 3 feet of storage along the wall for leaves and brush if there was not a sidewalk there. So, I mean, again, there's positives and negatives for all these options. We are flirting with minimums all across the board on that northern end.
Yeah.
So, Josh, I heard you say a couple of things earlier, and I just want to clarify them.
Sure, yeah, please do.
In your professional opinion, is it possible to safely reconstruct the street between the historic walls?
Is it possible to safely reconstruct it within the two walls? So my biggest worry by going between these two walls is we're gonna have fixed objects right on the outside of the curbs. You have one now on the east side that's there. I mean, right behind the curb, there's a wall. Now you're gonna put the historic wall on the other side that's right behind the curb. And you gotta watch out for plows, but you gotta also hope that vehicles don't leave the roadway and hit that. Now you're well low on your speed limit, you're below 25, you're 25 or lower, so those roadside hazards aren't as big of a deal, but you always have somebody that potentially could hit that because it's so close. It's like a power pole that's close, but it's a fixed object out there. So yes, though, you could fit a sidewalk in and you could make everything likely ADA and you could get it to work. But again, we're bare minimums. That's why I'm switching the drive lanes from 9 feet to 10, just to say, hey, we're meeting the minimum width there, and they're not overcrouching into the bike lane in that section. So you could just make it work. Will there be impacts to both walls? Well, we're gonna be digging right next to them and we're gonna be pouring up right against them, right? And they're gonna be right up against the roadway. And you gotta live with that they're gonna be right along the roadway. Dan's living with it right now on the east side, it's right against the roadway. Now you're gonna have it on both sides of the roadway.
So my follow-up question is, if one of these walls were moved, and I think it would obviously be the wall that encroaches by, it looks like 50 feet into the public right-of-way.
Yeah.
If that wall were moved, could you have it all?
Yes, you could. Yes, you could.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. And in your professional opinion, I mean, you pointed out, I think this was very poignant, because we talked about this on the pedestrian and bicycle committee.
Yes.
That road, when it was redone, was not done to professional standards. It was designed by the council.
That's not true. That is not true. I can give you chapter and verse on it if you want.
Okay. Well,
Okay,
so an engineer stamped the plan?
So what happened was that when they put the bump outs in, there was an assumption made that the road would be widened, which they could have done at the time to accommodate that. That did not happen. The engineer got the letter and the council never saw the letter. So we did not know there was a problem.
Okay, so you were not aware, you were ignorant of the,
We added.
of the folly of the design that was being.
We added parking. And we assumed the road would be widened to handle that. And when the letter came from the engineer saying there was a problem, the council never saw it.
Okay. Well.
So getting back to your, if you had the money and you could move the wall, that's where we started. We started with trying to move one of those walls. And there was a good reason to do it. It's because we wanted to hit standards up there. We wanted to provide space. We wanted to accommodate everything. Now there's trees impacted with that too, right?
Right.
So there's these impacts and there's these sensitive areas. So yeah, I mean, we feel like we're kind of getting pushed more and more into a corner of what can we do just to get by. But yeah, if you ask me today, what would you do different? What could you do to make this all work? I'd say you have to move one of those walls. We can't move the east wall without impacting property, without actually physically taking property or temporary easement to do it. We can go to the west. I'm not saying that I want to do that. I'm saying we can do that. Like there is the right of way there to do that. I'm trying to be factual with it. I'm not trying to, throw an opinion out of trying to impact one versus the other. I'm just trying to be factual.
I mean, as a committee, our goal is to create a safe, well-designed public thoroughfare. We have been told by you and other professionals that it would not be safe for pedestrians to be pushed into this street, given the volume of traffic that we have on that street. We know for a fact that if we measure pedestrian use of this street, it's lower than it would be if the street were safely designed. It is simply a fact. Pedestrians avoid unsafe spaces. Some people, I get it, yes, some people walk in places that are not necessarily very safe. That's okay. I mean, you can make that choice, but by and large, many people will avoid spaces which are not thoughtfully designed. Whether it's a dark detour to avoid a tree, or a road that is too busy for people to walk on. And yes, of course, we could all simply choose to walk when no one is driving on the street. But what that is a community that values vehicles over other forms of transportation. We are saying Cars can be there whenever they want. We're gonna build a road for them, but we are not gonna make it safe for pedestrians to walk on the same main thoroughfare, which leads to a beautiful new development on the other side of the bridge, and which brings people in and out of Monona every day on bike, on foot, and by car. So some people made the comment tonight, which I certainly appreciate, that character is a part of this. And I agree that whatever we do should be done thoughtfully and beautifully to maintain the character of our community. But if the character of our community is to consider pedestrians second-class citizens, then option one is your answer. I would argue we shouldn't do anything. It's an embarrassment to spend $900,000 essentially ending up right where we started 14 years ago. That's a monumental waste of money. If you're gonna do it right. You know, and we're gonna be right here again 10, 15 years from now if we spend all this money and really don't improve fundamentally the situation. You know, I would love to see us potentially consider a one-way street or some of these other things, but as you point out, I mean, this is problematic. This is a main thoroughfare. You know, how hard is it to say we have a public right-of-way? We need to use that public right-of-way. That's why we have a public right-of-way. This is a public thoroughfare. I don't think anyone on this stretch of land wants to be responsible for plowing the street. I think they expect the city of Monona to come and plow that street. It is a public space. It's not a private street. Many of the people who use that street don't live on it. It's how we come and go to our city.
Not disagreeing with any of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bill?
One option I wonder if you've ever looked at, the super duper stone wall. Have you considered making that the center of make it kind of like a little bitty boulevard going on the other side of it with it southbound?
Yeah, like splitting the road there. I mean, obviously, we would impact the west properties.
No, you won't. That's exactly dead nut center in the right of way.
Yeah, oh, I know it is. It is. There is a few houses there that are right up against the right of way.
Well, I can't help that.
We have not looked at that option. That is an option. We have not looked at that option.
Maybe it's something that could be looked at.
Yeah, and separate the street
We
there.
keep worrying about the wall that's actually living in the right of way, but we're not too concerned about the residences that have been built into the right of way. Those we seem to ignore. Thank you.
We have not looked at that option.
Chad.
Just one more comment, and it's something that we had talked about on the pedestrian and bike committee, but it was, I think it was just an idea thrown out in passing, but it's in keeping with the spirit of looking for other options. As I look at the west side of this street, the lakeside, where there is an ample right-of-way all the way down the street to accommodate a large multi-use path. Is it not true that a large multi-use path could be put in? You could keep your historic fence wall where it is. The path could be the other side of it. And then you could potentially keep the curbs where they are and accommodate all of these things we're talking about. I mean, the only thing it doesn't solve is the problem of the leaves. But a multi-use path maybe even lets us shrink the curbs on one side. I mean, you could actually create less space on the street right of way.
Yeah. Yep, it's an option too. It was talked about. So, you know, what Chad's suggesting is, you know, what if we narrow the roadway, put a multi-use path on the west side where a lot of the bikes are kind of coming along from the lakeside, riding the lakeside to their view. You could do that. We're talking more money, which is fine, right? If we could talk extra dollars. And the other thing with a multi-use path is it's going to eat up some of the driveways along that side as far as parking space. And people that will have to get used to it, not saying they can, is there's people going both directions there as they exit their driveways. Now they only typically have to kind of worry about bikes coming from one direction. There's a lot of access points there.
Right.
Not that it hasn't been done, but those are some of the, you know, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, no,
on the
I
other
get
side.
it. I get it.
But yeah, it's an option. That is an option.
I mean, isn't it also true that a multi-use path would be maintained entirely by the city? It'd be plowed by the city, it wouldn't be. It's no different than the bike path that's on the other side of the Yahara River through there, you know.
So that is an option too. Yes.
But not an option that's really been seriously looked at.
It's an option that would cost more, so it was eliminated sooner.
Right.
I would say. Not in the sense of it's not a fair option. It was, what can we do to minimize cost, Chad, right?
Right.
And if that's not a factor for us, we can look at other options, right?
You know, I'm not saying that we should consider the option because I'm looking to spend more money. The point has been made, how do we creatively solve a problem?
Right.
And we have very real constraints due to the wall.
Right. We also will take more landscaping and trees with that option too.
Right.
With a 10-foot path outside of the curb along one side now, especially if it's along the west side through a couple areas. Can we meander that? Yes. Can we avoid some of that? Yes, but we will take more than a 5-foot sidewalk on the east side.
Right.
I'm just,
Yep.
Do
you have any other comments or questions for Josh?
Nothing online.
Nothing online? Okay. Well, this was a consideration, discussion and consideration. So I guess I would be looking for some sort of recommendation we could pass on to City Council and or direction for the public information meeting on October 21st. Unless we don't wish to forward a recommendation.
I've never heard this group this quiet.
Yeah, usually you guys have this.
I mean,
Tim. So the next step along this, so this is discussion and consideration, but yet there's still another public meeting coming up in October, right? And so what will be accomplished there? If we choose one of these three, that goes as our recommendation unless.
So I was gonna take all three to them. I'm still gonna take options to them, the public, right? And the residents that are along that street. Do we want to provide any other options? Do we want to change anything that I'm showing? Do we want to wipe anything out that what I'm showing?
The only option that I can think of is that one that I suggested
Right, where we put the.
Well, you know, this was one more that hadn't taken any consideration.
So I don't know if you have to pick an option tonight, unless, again, up to you guys. But we are going back to the public to discuss this some more. I mean, obviously they were here tonight. They already kind of heard some of them. And they'll probably have a bunch of questions, just like they had statements earlier.
Jennifer, if I could.
Yes, please.
So October 21st will be a public information meeting of the Public Works Committee. So the presentation, Josh will give the presentation again that evening. There'll be a Q&A with the residents who show up. And then after that meeting, or after that 6A, 6B would be another opportunity for the Public Works Committee to consider an option to recommend to City Council for their November 1st meeting. So that would be your next opportunity. If you don't want to do anything tonight, October 21st, we would need a quorum for any consideration that evening to advance to City Council. That'll be another opportunity for residents to listen to Josh and then to ask more questions, get more answers for this committee to, I guess, entertain and then make a recommendation.
So I'd make a motion that we table this till our next meeting.
Second that.
We have a motion to table and a second. Just so I understand the motion, we are tabling until the October 21st meeting, where we moving for recommendation?
Yes.
So we have a motion and a second to table this discussion until the October 21st meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Tom opposed. Can you check with Beth if she opposed or
No,
she was yes?
She was a yes.
I was a yes.
Okay, thank you.
Motion passes. We will table until the October 21st meeting. Thank you, everyone. So moving on, item 6B, discussion and consideration of changes to the current alternate side parking configuration on Shore Acres Road, Cold Spring Avenue to Parkway Drive. So, you want to set this one up or shall? Right.
Okay, at the last Public Works Committee meeting, the Public Works Committee did hear from the Verbergs, and they did choose to put this item on the agenda for discussion and consideration again. The letters that were sent to the Shore Acres residents between Cold Spring and Parkway were included in your packet for your reference. There were several emails and exchanges with the Verbergs and I think a few other residents that are also included in your packet for review. To summarize, we've heard the Verbergs mention that they would prefer the alternate side parking go away and go back to what it once was. And I think I heard a few members at the last meeting talk about considering some other options about possibly doing no parking Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to about 3:30 p.m. I'm not sure what else would be on the table, what other options the residents would want to share, but it's up for your discussion and consideration if you want to change things.
Yeah.
I guess I have been swayed by the folks living in the neighborhood that, you know, the current situation is not a safe one. I'm curious to hear, Dan, from you, if this is really being done for brush, then why can't we simply occasionally put up the temporary no parking signs, or possibly even decide some way, I don't know if there's a way to have permanent dates where the street doesn't allow parking, and that so they can just be on a permanent sign, and you know, you kind of have to take notice that the first week in October or whatever, I don't know how you do it.
Sure.
But is that a possible solution that accommodates the needs of the city to do things on the street 3 weeks out of the year, say? I mean, I guess I was doubting my recollection of what you had told us the city needs as some of the residents were speaking tonight. And I do find it compelling as we talk about the slope of that area, and I know the street well because I have biked on it many times. It's true, like when you park on the other side, you can't get out of your driver's side door as easily. And that hadn't occurred to me until tonight.
Very narrow.
And so, and the fact that it's easier to see what you're doing when you're coming down a hill and looking on a street as opposed to coming up a hill, and there are things, so this is all like kind of common sense stuff. How do we find a way to meet the needs of the city on a public street and still have a safe environment?
Okay. So from a staff standpoint, we have leaf collection, brush collection, we do street sweeping, snow and ice control, and garbage collection. And we've heard from several residents that, and I've seen it myself, probably almost daily, you see traffic going the wrong way down the one way. And a lot of times it's the residents that live in the area that are traveling the wrong way down the one way. Aside from that, that's a PD issue. There are 4 cycles to the brush collection. As far as leaf collection, we typically start now in October. You get 2 months, October and November. We get to go into December on a good winter, up to about December 15th. And then we come back in the month of April. So those are the services that we're talking about that our crew performs, and we have contracted services. Regarding the petition, there's 18 addresses on that stretch of Shore Acres. 6 addresses signed the petition, and one of those 6 lives on the east side of the street. So,
Ma'am, we can't have you speak during a meeting.
at least
Ma'am.
the petition that we were given by the attorney, that this committee has seen. So I'll do whatever the city council and this public works committee wants, but just know that we have not heard from anybody on the east side of the street that wants to change things. That's all I'm saying. But I'll do whatever, and I'll ask my crew to do whatever, and we'll inform Barnes. But when the cars are parked on the northbound lane, east side, they do not get the same kind of services as the folks on the west side. So, and if there's options or discussion to look at alternative types of siding, I'm open to that. But we would have to communicate specifically for Barnes when they're in on their 4 cycles, what day they would go hit that area. We've seen, like in other cities like Madison, where street sweeping, there could be a 1 hour block on the first Tuesday of the month, or a 2 hour block where we come through and sweep the street.
Right.
We can do that. Leaf collection, we don't set schedules for leaf collection because we have 4 staff members in our street department. We have 3 trucks. Those trucks each carry a capacity of 25 cubic yards, and they fill up quick.
Right.
And when a truck breaks down, then we would be off schedule. And if something else comes up, then we are off schedule. It could be a water main break where we have all hands on deck, or something like that where we would have to pull the crew. So then that would set us behind again. So that's why we don't do schedules, or we don't do wards or things like that. What our crew does do for leaf collection, we do have it broken down into 3 grids. And when they end on one day, they'll pick up the next day at the same spot. And in the early part of the leaf drop season, we are pretty efficient. When the bulk of the leaves are on the ground, we don't move as fast, nowhere near as fast. We probably can collect probably 3 to 4 residences before that truck is filled up, like on South Winnequa or in your neighborhood. There's a lot of trees, that truck fills up quick, so we slow way down. You know, if you have a particular day and time for street sweeping, you could possibly do the same date and time for leaf collection, as long as that truck is on the road up in that area. But we try to avoid scheduled or dedicated days to be somewhere with leaf collection. But we do recognize we do have a few areas in the city where we do have to somewhat accommodate. But there are things we can do. The sign would be very busy on what it would say, though. So, but.
Is it possible that, like you referenced the Madison habit of, I know, you know, they sweep streets either in the morning or the afternoon of a certain day of the week.
Right.
So, you know, you'll see it all over town where no parking from 8 to noon on Thursdays. And is that a big enough window, or maybe it would just be every Monday or something? Or maybe it's the day that there's trash collection in that neighborhood, and then we would, you know, solve 2 problems at once there, potentially.
Right. The, you know, the services that we control, along with the dedicated timing of the garbage collection, that would be easy. I'd have to look at the way the brush collection goes with Barnes. But with the past history with Barnes, they are very accommodating. And I think for sure that their operations supervisor, if we have a dedicated road with a dedicated time and it falls within their schedule, I think they would accommodate that. They've been very good to work with.
Okay.
So whether it's 1 or 2 days a month for a half a day, we could get that done.
What about snow removal?
Snow removal would be the other one, because we experienced it up in on Gordon and Wallace, Cold Spring, those other areas where we just recently implemented even odd parking. If the cars are there and we have to remove snow during the day, there's going to be windrows left behind. And then if we come back the next day, it'd be an overtime situation to be back in the morning before the kids get there. More often than not, that snow is packed down and it's going to be hard to scrape off. You see something similar up in this area if the kids are parked on the road. The snow removal is not as good as it is in other areas of the city when you have parked cars. But we have something similar up at Valerie and Gordon. You know, just in the more dense areas or the areas where we do have more cars on the road during the day, it's harder. So, you know, a new area that we're experiencing this is on Inland Way, where we have the new angled parking, and the cars are parked there overnight and throughout the day. We can't get in there to plow, so they have a mound of snow that they have to back in and out of. So that's a good example of what it could look like. But we would go back to plowing Parkway the way we've done before. The nice thing, Shore Acres. The nice thing about the new asphalt on Shore Acres is when we put the new surface course down a few years ago, it was put down with the proper crown. So we do get better drainage up there. the last course was more flattened. I don't, in some areas it didn't drain as well. And plus with the tree cover, it doesn't dry out, but that's beside the point. But there are other things we can do.
So would staff recommend, your preference, what would staff recommend? Put you on the spot,
Well,
sorry.
based on, because the services that we're talking about are sporadic, sweeping, we're out once every 3 weeks to 4 weeks. So you're looking at one pass through. Leaf collection, based on the cubic yards that we see that we collect every year, we make one pass in the city, one every 12 business days, as long as we have all the trucks up. So we would be through that area more often in fall. Brush collection, like I said, there's 4 cycles, and we could request Barnes come in there when we have available no parking. I would like to go for 2, if we change it, 2 half days a month. So if you're doing that, do you go 2 full days, like let's say Wednesdays, or what day is trash pickup on that street? Tuesday. So that would probably be the day.
I mean, why not make it correspond with the recycling pickup? Because then you've got a lot more cans out on the street and.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Good point.
So those 2 days a month, can residents in that area handle no parking 2 days a month on Shore Acres? Prior to this meeting, I talked to our operations supervisor, and he's the one that sets the daily schedule. He's more than open to these odd configurations, similar to what City of Madison does, to make things work. But the services that we will do outside of winter, those can easily be accommodated. It's the winter snow plowing that is going to probably be going back to the way you guys used to see it. So when the streets open, we'll come through and get the slush. But that'd be the compromise. If you take away the alternate side and go to 2 Tuesdays a month, whatever the recycled dates are, and we would sign it that way.
I think most residents have made their homes now so their cars can get out of the street, during the snow.
Right.
I know we have the people across the street, so their cars are out.
Right.
The street for snowplow, because none of us would want to bring our cars out.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
People have been pretty even, the people who do kind of routinely park on the street at night when it snows, they're living in their driveway.
Right.
Even if they're single wide and all park 2-3 cars.
We try to get in around 4 in the morning on those to get in here before the kids and other people park, before the business people come into town. So we would get the street at, hopefully before the kids get there. If we're in by 4.
You guys are usually, well.
Yeah.
You get up in the morning, it's like, yep, the plow's already been through, and here come the kids, and the street's already clear.
So all those plow trucks we have, they do a good job of being on time, and I think we can make a round through the city within about 6 to 8 hours. But so that would be the change.
Yeah.
Dan, could you give us that again in 25 words or less? And then
Yes.
Then I will turn that into a motion.
Yep. So I don't have it'd be a Tuesday, it'd be 2 Tuesdays a month, every other Tuesday.
Recycling Tuesday.
The recycling Tuesday.
Blue days.
Every other
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Every other Tuesday. It would be signed no parking. Probably, I'm gonna go with 7:30 AM to 3 PM, because by 3, we're wrapping up, cleaning up equipment. So if that's acceptable, we can knock out our services in that time. 7:30 to 3.
That's what I just made the
Tuesdays.
motion about.
And I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as presented indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, so I'll draft that ordinance change up, and from here it'll go to city council. And it takes 2 reads at council, so more than likely, probably by the end of November, going into December, that change will happen, if council approves it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Item 7, Public Works and Utility Operations Report.
Updates to the report. Water tower is, I believe, done. The painting's done, the fall protection system's done, so we're wrapping that one up. The stormwater portion of Stonebridge is done. I think there's some miscellaneous park work to be done. But our portion, we're good. Gateway Green is done. I think that's probably about it for projects. I'm moving into road rating season, so the next week or so, I'm out rating the streets and determining my maintenance list for next year. As far as the chip seal, we have a big section of chip seal on Winnequa Road next year, from around Progressive going north as much as we can get. And then we've got 2 sections of mill and overlay identified, and but I'll know more once I get the road rating done for the year. So aside from that, I don't think I have anything else to report on.
I got a question.
Yep.
With the new structure that's in Stonebridge Park.
Yeah.
As I walk by there, the throat on that, on the street is, how are we keeping raccoons out of there?
Even a regular size inlet, you can't keep raccoons out.
How big is that opening?
Brad, do
Is
you recall how big that opening is?
It's a 6.5 inch opening.
Yeah.
Now, I know a little bit about building playgrounds, and 5-inch opening is maximum. I mean, can
Well-
somebody crawl in there? It's big.
I don't think they would put something in that doesn't meet standard.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Strand designed the whole thing, and they're top notch on stormwater. So I understand your concern, but I can't imagine that they would design something that's not according to industry standard.
Okay.
I mean,
Their design comes from Iowa DOT,
right.
so.
it just seems like somebody could crawl in there.
I see raccoons crawling those inlets
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
quite frequently myself, but yeah.
No, it's big enough for a person. Crawl in there.
The building code, you can't pass a 4-inch ball through a rail or other, structure that's designed to prevent someone from getting through that, or stuck or injured or whatever. So,
Yeah, it just seemed.
We'll check with the stormwater engineer at Strand and double check on that.
Yeah, so there's no other grading inside of that thing? It just goes down into the pits?
You mean, does it get smaller? Like the opening, does it get smaller?
Is there a grate in there?
Oh, great. No.
I would probably not.
It goes straight from there to the chamber.
Right. It goes into a sump and then into the storm sewer.
Sump like a P-trap kind
Yeah,
of thing?
basically. It's very small though.
Okay, thanks.
All right, do I have a motion?
Move adjournment?
Do I have a second? A motion, all right, say aye.
Aye.
You bet.
You're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Will you text me?
Yeah.
Good. Well, that was more fun than I was expecting.
Older cell phone left a message.